Oh, I wish I had this. Oh, there was a Twitter thread or something I saw from, or was it a Reddit? Who was it? From a European black guy. I brought this up once on stream, and all you guys called me racist or said I didn't know what I was talking about or something, and I hated all of you for it. And somebody else made this observation who was European, and I should have saved it. I remember reading this a few days ago. It might have been a week or two ago, actually. My past 2 weeks have been a blur. It was a, this is an observation that I'd made that I thought was interesting, that in the United States, okay, let me draw a geographically accurate US map. That looks about right. In the United States, there's like, even though they're separated by, Griffin Gamble thinks they're $50. Destiny, who do you think will win DNC for the Democratic Party? In the United States, even though, you know, I don't want to say enclaves of black people. That sounds weird. But you've got like black communities. They tend to be more city, not spread out across a lot of country, right? Even though they might be separated in a lot of different places, there's kind of like this unifying aspect of like African American culture in the United States. There's like this kind of like unifying aspect in terms of like the way they talk, you know, slang jargon that's kind of shared, attitudes, dress, everything. There's like a common like unifying thing, right? Which is in the United States, you kind of like, oh, okay, you know, it's a brother, all right? You see it, it's like, oh, cool, okay, right? Okay, now there are going to be people in the United States who are like, that's not true. Black people from Compton are way different than black people from Baltimore or whatever, which is true. I'm not saying the United States they're 100% the same, but I'm saying that there's like there's some type of like unifying thing there. But I'm saying that as an American, it's very weird, and maybe I haven't gone to enough places in Europe, and maybe this isn't trigger, but it's really strange as an American that when you travel to European countries, so like when I go to Sweden, when I go to the UK, Poland, Germany, I'm just thinking of a place where I've seen black people, sometimes when you're an American in other countries, you feel a little alone because there's a bunch of weirdos, a bunch of foreigners, and then you see a black dude. It's like, oh, shit. I can finally like bond. I feel like I'm home again. Okay, I'm in Europe, see a black guy. You go up and you talk to them, but then they actually sound like every other person right there. It's like the same. They're like so much more, I don't know if you would say integrated or whatever. Like if there's like 10 German people around speaking, they're like, and then there's a black guy and you're like, oh, dude, what up? And he's like, and he's like, oh, you sound, it's the exact same. Yeah, I thought that phenomenon was just like very strange, that it seems like in the United States, there's like this very, I don't know what you would call it, but there's like a distinct African-American culture from everybody, from or at least from a lot, probably the majority of African-Americans in the United States. But then when you go to, when you go to other countries, it's like that's a culture shock thing. Because the EU is more based on nationality than race. Well, no, I mean, like, there's going to be historical reasons in the United States relating to African Americans being brought over from other countries. Your ancestry is destroyed. You don't know who, you don't know where you come from. And then a unifying culture under slavery develops. And then once people are freed, there's a lot of culture that stems from that. And then a reaction to white America, racist policies, blah, 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 blah. So the us versus them stuff for white versus black or America versus black was probably like the defining thing that caused that separate culture to happen. But it's still like a very like culture shocky thing. I think that like, yeah, like if you walk up to like 5 British white dudes talking and then like a British black dude joins and then he starts talking, it's like the exact same as the 5 British white dudes. And it's like, oh shit. It's just like, it's just in the United States, it seems like it would be completely different. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's an interesting, my American observation, okay? Why do Americans call black people outside of America African American? Okay. Here's like the 60-second weird thing of African American as a term is a good term, okay? What it describes is a group of people that were brought over from Africa that don't know their ancestry, right? That's why they're African American. They're not Kenyan, they're not Ugandan, they're not, whatever of the countries where they might have come from, they don't know. So they're just called African American, right? It denotes people that are descendants of slaves, or initially slaves and people who are descendants of slaves, okay? The term is a good term because African American denotes a particular type of cultural group, right? Now, at some point, African American became like the polite thing to call black people because saying black was tacky. So what happened was in the, this is probably, I don't know when I would have been aware of this, but I know in the 90s and 2000s, Americans got into this thing where for a while we just called every black person African American. So you might see a British person, you might refer to like Idris Elbus, how do you pronounce his name? You might be like, oh, this is a really cool African American actor. And Americans would say shit like this. And it's like, well, no. That guy's British. He's not African American at all. It's like, oh, well, he's African. No. Nobody is African, okay? People come from countries or ethnic groups, just like nobody is European unless you're an American Nazi and you think people identify as European because you're retarded and you've never been to Europe before. Nobody's, So Americans started to refer to all black people as African American as like a polite way to not say black. But then past this, you got into a weird thing where people started to argue that African American was bad because you were saying that they were from Africa when they're actually American. So then African American became tacky, and then people brought back black, and they used capital B, I think, in the New York Times Style Guide. Was this in 2019? They started to say, well, now we should call them black, black Americans or black people with a capital B instead. It's pronounced Idris, Idra? I don't know. But yeah, so there's just like, I don't know why, or I don't know where we're gonna be in 5 or 10 years, but like we do this really weird runaround in the US where it's like, how do we call black people, like what do we call them? Because some things are offensive, some things aren't, and we don't even know what, it's just like, it's a whole dumb thing where people are just trying to not be racist, or they're trying to be woke, or they're trying to be SJW, or so I don't even know. It's just fucking weird and stupid. Yeah. Please look up how the paradoxical effects of ADHD meds have been debunked. You seem to still be under the impression meds work differently for people who have ADHD versus those who don't have ADHD. If you want to link me something, Bobby, knock yourself out. But my understanding is the way that it works is that if you have ADHD and you've got dopamine issues, that amphetamines or methylphenidate either prevents the reuptake of dopamine, or it like prevents it from like leaking more or something. There are two different mechanisms. Both of these work. It's like it works on the same problem. But if you don't have these issues with your dopamine and you just start overloading on amphetamines, you don't need them, then the effects that those are going to produce on you are going to be a lot different than the effects they produce on somebody that is like experiencing a legitimate shortage. That's the underlying biomechanical explanation. And my understanding is that clinically that's true.
Women, on the other hand, they have two sets of criteria that they evaluate men on. They have good guy stuff and bad boy stuff. And this is one of the reasons that there's so much confusion in our culture about what women want, because they say they want good guy things, and then they actually go with men who have bad boy things, but the truth is they want both, and you don't have to choose. In our language, we say, I'm a good guy, or I'm a bad boy, or I'm good, or I'm bad, or this is... But really, you can be both of these things. And in order to be both of these things, you have to maximize your physical attraction.
Keep in mind, there's something I feel very strongly about, and I've even argued with some women that disagree too, but I think I'm correct. I try to think of like more analogies or examples for this. When women say they want bad boys, they don't really. The bad boy has nothing to do with it. Women want all of the people that have like the hyper pro-social and independent traits that go along with being a bad boy. So for instance, usually bad boys are people that are somewhat edgy. Usually they're pretty charismatic. They tend to be pretty strong. They are very independent. They tend to be ambitious. Like these are the traits that we associate with bad boy. If you think of like, because if I showed you like some, 120-pound skinny dude that sat in his apartment but sells weed, right? Or even coke, like no girl's saying like, God, he's such a bad boy. You don't really care about the bad boy thing at all. You just care about the traits that tend to be associated with bad boys, which you can also find in like ambitious business guys, or people that do, that do really well on certain career paths, or, just guys that have like a certain selection of traits. Bad boy stuff is not really anything. It's the proxy for other traits that I think are really, that tend to be with like that bad boy figure. Yeah.
Activeness, face, body, height, voice, all the things that you can do, lose weight, get muscle, maximize it, and maximize your masculinity. Dominance, power, confidence, smoothness, which is, I'll explain.
Oh yeah, true, sure.